The Prussian Crusade was a series of 13th-century campaigns of Roman Catholic crusaders, primarily led by the Teutonic Knights, to Christianize the pagan Old Prussians. Invited after earlier unsuccessful expeditions against the Prussians by Polish princes, the Teutonic Knights began campaigning against the Balts in 1230. By the end of the century, having quelled several Prussian uprisings, the Knights had established control over Prussia and administered the Prussians through their monastic state. Wulfstan of Hedeby, an agent of Alfred of Wessex, recorded the seafaring and cattle-herding Prussians as a strong and independent nation. Mieszko I of the Polans tried to extend his realm from land he had just conquered around the mouth of the Oder as far as Prussia. Boleslaw I of Poland sent Adalbert of Prague to preach among the Prussians in 997, but the missionary was killed by the pagans. After some initial success among the Prussians, Adalbert's successor, Bruno of Querfurt, was also killed in 1009. The Poles waged war with the neighboring Prussians, Sudovians, and Wends over the following 2 centuries. While the Poles sought the conversion of the Prussians and control of their land, the Prussians engaged in lucrative raids for slaves in the bordering territories of Chelmno land and Masovia. Many Prussians nominally accepted baptism only to revert to pagan beliefs after hostilities ended. Henry of Sandomierz was killed fighting the Prussians in 1166. Boleslaw IV and Casimir II each led large armies into Prussia. While Boleslaw's forces were defeated in guerrilla warfare, Casimir imposed peace until his death in 1194. King Valdemar II of Denmark supported Danish expeditions against Samland until his capture by Henry, Count of Schwerin, in 1223. In 1206, the Cistercian bishop Christian of Oliva, with the support of the King of Denmark and Polish dukes, found a better reception than expected upon his arrival in the war-torn Chelmno land. Inspired, he travelled to Rome to prepare for a larger mission. When he returned to Chelmno in 1215, however, Christian found the Prussians hostile, possibly out of outrage at the actions of the Sword Brothers in Livonia or fear of Polish expansion. The pagan Prussians invaded Chelmno land, Masovia, and Pomerelia, besieged Chelmno and Lubawa, and forced converts to return to the old beliefs. Because of the growing intensity of attacks, Pope Honorius III sent a papal bull to Christian in March 1217 allowing him to begin preaching a crusade against the militant Prussians. The following year the pagans attacked Chelmno land and Masovia again, plundering 300 cathedrals and churches. Duke Conrad of Masovia succeeded in expelling the Prussians by paying a huge tribute, which only encouraged the Prussians, however. Honorius III called for a crusade under the leadership of Christian of Oliva and chose as papal legate the Archbishop of Gniezno, Wincenty I Nialuk. German and Polish crusaders began gathering in Masovia in 1219, but serious planning only began in 1222 upon the arrival of nobles such as Duke Henry of Silesia, Archbishop Laurentius of Wrocław, and Laurentius of Lebus. Numerous Polish nobles began endowing Christian's bishopric of Prussia with estates and castles in Chelmno land during the meantime. The lords agreed that the primary focus was to rebuild the defences of Chelmno land, especially Chelmno itself, whose fortress was almost completely rebuilt. By 1223, however, most of the crusaders had left the region, and the Prussians devastated Chelmno land and Masovia yet again, forcing Duke Conrad to seek refuge in the castle of Plock. The Balts even reached Gdansk, Danzig, in Pomerelia. In 1225 or 1228, 14 North German knights were recruited by Conrad and Christian to form a military order. First granted the estate of Sidlitz in Kuyavia until the completion of a castle at Dobrzyn, the group became known as the Order of Dobrzyn, or Dobrin. The Knights of Dobrzyn initially had success driving the Prussians from Chelmno land, but a pagan counterattack against them and Conrad killed most of the order. The survivors were granted asylum in Pomerania by Duke Swantopolk II. The Order of Calatrava, granted a base near Gdansk, was also ineffective. While in Rome, Christian of Oliva had made the acquaintance of Hermann von Salza, the Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights from 1209 to 39. With the permission of Duke Conrad of Masovia and the Masovian nobility, Christian requested aid from the Teutonic Knights against the pagan Prussians in 1226. Stability with the Prussians would then allow Conrad to pursue becoming High Duke of Poland. While Hermann was interested in the Polish offer, his focus was on assisting Emperor Frederick II with the Fifth Crusade. Because the Teutonic Order had recently been expelled from the Burzenland in the Kingdom of Hungary, Hermann also desired greater autonomy for his forces in future endeavors. Hermann met with Frederick II at Rimini and suggested that the subjugation of the Prussians would make the Holy Roman Empire's borders easier to defend against invaders. The Holy Roman Emperor gave his approval of the enterprise in the Golden Bull of Rimini of 1226, granting them Chelmno land, or Kulmerland, and any future conquests. The mission to convert the Prussians remained under the command of Bishop Christian of Oliva. Before beginning the campaign against the Prussians, the Teutonic Knights allegedly signed the Treaty of Kruswicka with the Poles on June 16, 1230, by which the order was to receive Kulmerland and any future conquests, similar to the terms of the Golden Bull of Rimini. The agreement has been disputed by historians, the document has been lost and many Polish historians have doubted its authenticity and the Teutonic Order's territorial claims. However, recent studies by Polish historians have established the treaty's legitimacy. From the viewpoint of Duke Conrad, Chelmno was only to be used as a temporary base against the Prussians and future conquests were to be under the authority of the Duke of Masovia. Hermann von Salza saw the document as granting the order autonomy in all territorial acquisitions, aside from allegiance to the Holy See and the Holy Roman Emperor. The Golden Bull of Rieti issued by Pope Gregory IX in 1234 reaffirmed the order's control of conquered lands, placing them only under the authority of the Holy See. The 14th-century chronicler Peter von Dusberg mentioned 11 tribal districts in Prussia, Bardia, Kulmerland, formerly under Polish control, Galandia, Nadrovia, Natangia, Pojezaniat, Pomzaniat, Samland, Skolovia, Sadovia, and Ermland. Peter estimated that while most tribes could muster about 2,000 cavalry, Samland could raise 4,000 cavalry and 40,000 infantry, while Sadovia had 6,000 cavalry and an almost innumerable multitude of other warriors. In contrast, the Prussians of ravaged Kulmerland could raise fewer troops than the other tribes. Galandia, a forested wilderness of lakes and rivers, also had a small population to raise troops from. Modern estimates indicate a total Prussian population of 170,000, smaller than that suggested by Peter von Dusberg. Initial Teutonic campaigns. After receiving or forging the claim to Kulmerland in 1230, Hermann dispatched Conrad von Landsberg as his envoy with a small force of 7 Teutonic Knights and 70 to 100 squires and sergeants to Masovia as a vanguard. They took possession of Vogelsang, German for bird song, a castle being built by Conrad opposite the future Torin. Other sources indicate that 2 knights constructed Vogelsang in 1229, but were killed by Prussians soon after. This region south of the Vistula River was relatively safe with a mixed Christian and pagan population, and Conrad von Landsberg ordered a small raid against pagans across the Vistula. Led by Hermann Bach, reinforcements numbering 20 knights and 200 sergeants arrived at Vogelsang in 1230 after the castle's completion. Hermann von Salza could not spare any more, as the order's primary bases of operation were in Outremer and Armenia. While the earlier Polish expeditions had usually marched eastward into the Prussian wilderness, the order focused in the west to establish fortresses along the Vistula River. They campaigned annually whenever crusading knights from the west arrived. The early campaigns were primarily composed of Polish, German, and Pomeranian crusaders, as well as some Prussian militiamen auxiliaries. The Polish and Pomeranian dukes proved essential through their providing of troops and bases. Most of the secular crusaders would return to their homes after the end of the campaigns, leaving the monastic Teutonic Knights the task of consolidating the gains and garrisoning the newly built forts, most of which were small and made of timber. Some secular Polish knights were granted vacant territories, especially in Kulmerland, although most of the conquered territory was retained by the Teutonic Order. Colonists from the Holy Roman Empire began to immigrate eastward, allowing the foundation of a new town each year, many of which were granted common law. The Crusaders began campaigning against the neighboring Pomeranians and their leader Pepin. Advancing from Nezawa, with the aid of Conrad of Masovia, Bach took control of ruins at modern Torun and advanced toward the pagan-occupied Rogau. A local Prussian captain defected and handed that castle to the Crusaders, who then destroyed the Prussian fort of Querch or Gursky. The defecting captain then tricked Pippin into being captured by the knights, ending Prussian resistance in the Kulm Erland. By 1232, the knights had established or rebuilt fortresses at Kulm, Chelmno, and Thorn. Pope Gregory IX called for reinforcements, which included 5,000 veterans under the leadership of the Burgrave of Magdeburg. In summer 1233, the knights led a crusading army of 10,00036 and established a fortress at Marienwerder, Quijin, in Pomerania. The Pomerelian dukes Swantopolk and Sambor supported a smaller army for an invasion of Pomerania during the winter of 1233–34. After a close battle, the pagan Pomeranians were routed on the frozen Sirgun River by the arrival of the ducal cavalry, and the battlefield was subsequently known as the Field of the Dead. The building of a fortress at Redin, Radzin-Chelminsky, stabilized the eastern Kulm Erland in 1234. The Bishop of Prussia, Christian of Oliva, claimed 2/3 of conquered territory, granting 1/3 to the Teutonic Order. The papal legate William of Modena mediated between the two sides, granting the knights 2/3 but reserving extra rights for the bishop. The Teutonic Knights also sought the incorporation of the small order of Dobrzin into the larger Teutonic Order. Conrad of Masovia was furious with this proposal and demanded the return of the Dobrzin land, which the knights were reluctant to do. Duke Conrad subsequently refused to aid the Crusaders any further. With the approval of the Pope and the Bishop of Plock, the Teutonic Knights assimilated the Order of Dobrzin in a bull on April 19, 1235. The displeased Conrad of Masovia had the castle of Dobrzin returned to him. In 1237 the Teutonic Knights assimilated the Sword Brothers or Livonian Order, a military order active in Livonia, after they were nearly wiped out by Lithuanians in the Battle of Saul. With the support of Henry III, Margrave of Meissen, in 1236, the Crusaders advanced north along both banks of the Vistula and forced the submission of most Pomeranians. Although Henry did not participate in the 1237 campaign against the Pomeranians, the Margrave supplied the order with 2 large riverboats which defeated the smaller craft used by the Prussian tribes. Near the Prussian settlement of Trousseau, Elbing, Elblog, was founded with colonists from Lübeck, while Christburg, Geertgan, protected the land east of Marienwerder. From 1238 to 40, the Teutonic Knights campaigned against the Bardians, Natangians, and Warmians. A small force of crusading knights were slaughtered besieging the Warmian fort of Hohenada, leading Marshal Dietrich von Berheim to return with a larger army. When the Warmian commander Kodrun advised that the pagans should surrender and convert, Hohenada's own garrison killed him, leading Dietrich to order a successful capture of the fort. The fort on the Vistula lagoon was renamed Balga and rebuilt in 1239 to protect the order's territory in Ermland. A Prussian counterattack to reclaim the fort failed, and the local Prussian leader Piopso was killed. Seasonal reinforcements led by Otto I, Duke of Brunswick-Lüneburg, consolidated Teutonic control over Natangia and Bardia. In a bull of October 1, 1243, Pope Innocent IV and William of Modena divided Prussia into the dioceses of Kulm, Pomerania, Ermland, and Samland, although the territory of the last had not yet been conquered. The Teutonic Knights' further advance into Prussia was slowed by the outbreak of the First Prussian Uprising in 1242. Alarmed by the Crusaders' rapid expansion into territory bordering his lands, the Christian Duke Swantopolk of Pomerelia allied with the conquered Prussians and supported an armed rebellion against the Crusaders. The Teutonic Order's capacity to resist was weakened, as there were fewer German Crusaders arriving and the Polish princes were feuding amongst themselves. The Crusaders' cavalry and crossbow artillery proved overwhelming in level terrain, but the Prussians were more experienced and maneuverable in smaller skirmishes in wooded terrain. While the Prussian and Pomeranian troops captured the majority of the Order's castles and defeated the Knights at Rensen in 1244, they lacked the siege capabilities to finish the Knights off. The Germans used their politics and diplomacy to divide Swantopolk from the Prussians. The Poles sought the Pomeranian prince's territory along the Vistula, while the papal legate, the future Pope Urban IV, wanted the Christians to direct their energies against pagans instead of each other. Swantopolk ceased aiding the Prussians in 1248, while most of the latter agreed to peace in the Treaty of Christburg in February 1249. The treaty granted civil liberties and considerable autonomy to native converts to Christianity. While the majority of tribes followed the terms of the treaty, intermittent fighting continued until 1253, with the Natangians even defeating the Order at Krucken in November 1249. Samland. After the Western Prussians were pacified by the early 1250s, the Teutonic Knights continued their advance north and east, next facing the Sambians of thickly populated Samland. Comter Heinrich Stango of Christburg led an army across the Vistula Lagoon in 1252, with the intention of attacking Romove. The Sambians defeated the Crusaders in battle, however, killing Stango in the process. To replace the fallen soldiers, the Pope and Popo von Ostrana, the new Grand Master, began preaching a crusade against the Sambians. In 1253 Popo and the provincial master, Dietrich von Gruningen, as well as the Margrave of Meissen, reduced the rebellious Galandians, but did not severely punish them. The order was concerned that the Prussians would seek to join Poland if they were pressed too greatly. With the rebellious tribes pacified, Pope Innocent IV directed Dominican monks to preach the crusade, and the order sent embassies to the kings of Hungary, Bohemia, and the princes of the Holy Roman Empire. While the order waited for the crusaders to arrive in Prussia, the Livonian branch founded Memel, Klapta, along the Curonian lagoon to prevent the Samogitians from assisting the Sambians. The 60,000 strong crusading army which gathered for the campaign included Bohemians and Austrians under the command of King Ottokar II of Bohemia, Moravians under Bishop Bruno of Olmütz, Saxons under Margrave Otto III of Brandenburg, and a contingent brought by Rudolf of Habsburg. The Sambians were crushed at the Battle of Rudau, and the fort's garrison surrendered quickly and underwent baptism. The Crusaders then advanced against Kwidzyn, Waldau, Kamen, and Tapia, Gwardesk. The Sambians who accepted baptism were treated considerately, but those who resisted received no mercy from the Crusaders. Samland was conquered in January 1255 in a campaign lasting less than a month. Near the pagan settlement of Tvang Saint, the Teutonic Knights founded Königsberg, King's Mountain, named in honor of the Bohemian king. Braunsberg, Broniwo, possibly named in honor of Bruno of Olmütz or Bruno of Querfurt, was also founded nearby. The Knights built the castle Wela, Znamensk, at the junction of the Ala and Pregel rivers to guard against pagan Sudovian, Nadrovian, and Skolovian attacks on Christian Prussians and Germans in Samland. Thursko, a Christian Sambian chief, and his son Madilo were entrusted with Wela. With the assistance of Sambian levies, the Teutonic Order advanced further into Natangia, capturing the fortresses of Kapostet and Ichtalite near Wonsdorf. The Natangian leader Godeko and his 2 sons were killed resisting the advance. The Great Prussian Uprising, 1260–1274. The Livonian Order had been campaigning into Samogitia, which was northeast of the Prussians. The pagan Samogitians received a 2-year truce in 1259, with the Christians expecting the pagans to accept Christianity. In 1259 the Samogitians decided to retain their pagan independence, however 48 they defeated the Livonian Order at the Battle of Skuidas in 1259, and then inflicted a crushing defeat on the Crusaders in the Battle of Derby in 1260. The pagan victory inspired the Prussians to rebel again, starting the Great Prussian Uprising the same year. In the minds of the indigenous peoples, the pagan victories reinforced the validity of their pre-Christian beliefs. Despite their territorial gains in Prussia, the primary emphasis of the Teutonic Knights was still the Holy Land, and few reinforcements could be spared for the Baltic. The German princes of the Holy Roman Empire were distracted by the imperial succession, and few seasonal crusaders came to the assistance of the Prussian brothers. The first reinforcements were defeated at Pokerwies in 1261. The order had most of its Prussian castles destroyed during the early 1260s. Besides Prussia, the pagans also raided Livonia, Poland, and Volhynia. The Crusaders began to stem the uprising with the assistance of Albert I, Duke of Brunswick-Lüneburg, and Henry III, Landgrave of Thuringia, in 1265. In the following year German crusading reinforcements were provided by Margraves Otto III and John I of Brandenburg, and the castle of Brandenburg, Schakowo, was founded in their honor. King Ottokar II of Bohemia briefly returned to Prussia in 1267–68, but was deterred by poor weather, while Margrave Dietrich II of Meissen also campaigned with the order in 1272. The Crusaders gradually killed or forced the surrender of each Prussian tribe's war leader. As a result of the uprising, many native Prussians lost some of the rights they had received in the Treaty of Christburg and were subsequently reduced to serfdom. Numerous Prussians fled to the Grand Duchy of Lithuania or to Sedovia, while others were resettled by the Crusaders. The tribal chiefs who remained in Prussia became vassals of the Teutonic Knights, who began rebuilding their castles in stone or brick. Later campaigns. Although the Teutonic Knights' offensive capability was greatly weakened during the Great Pagan Uprising, they did engage in some campaigns against the pagan on their eastern flank. The Bardians, Natangians, and Warmians had converted to Christianity, but the Sudovians and Lithuanians to their east remained pagan and continued their border warfare with the Teutonic Knights. Led by Skalmantas during the Great Uprising, the Sudovians sacked Bartenstein, Bartoshes, in Bardia, which was to be the focal point of their borders. Defenseless against the Sudovians, the Natangians and Bardians allied with the Teutonic Knights for protection, although little assistance could be provided initially. The Christian Natangians clans gathered in 1274 and killed 2,000 of the Sudovian raiders. Grand Master Anno von Sangerhausen recruited Thuringians and Myceners to complete the Teutonic recovery of Natangia. Anno's successor as Grand Master, Hartmann von Heldrungen, directed the provincial master of Prussia, Conrad von Theurberg the Elder, to attack eastward from Königsberg along the Pregel River to separate the Sudovians from the Nadrovians. Vogt Theodoric of Samland and his militia sacked 2 river forts and plundered a large amount of treasure and goods. Theodoric led another crusading force, including Teutonic Knights, 150 sergeants, and Prussian infantry, against another Nadrovian fort. Although the natives attempted to surrender after siege ladders were placed, most of the warriors were slaughtered by the Crusaders, with only a few natives surviving to be resettled. Conrad then led the knights past the destroyed border forts to assault the Nadrovians' main redoubt of Kameniswijk, defended by 200 warriors. Most of the natives were killed after the knights stormed the fortress, and the Nadrovian clans surrendered soon afterward to become auxiliaries of the Crusaders. The Teutonic Knights then used Nadrovia and Memel as bases against Skalovia on the lower Memel River. Skalovia would then serve as a base against pagan Samogitia, which separated Teutonic Prussia from Teutonic Livonia. Because of this threat, the Lithuanians provided assistance to the pagan Skalovians, and the Crusaders and pagans each engaged in border raids to distract enemy forces. Because the pagans were strongly defended in the wilderness, the Teutonic Knights focused on traveling up the Memel River toward the strong pagan Fort Ragnit. Theodoric of Samland led 1,000 men in the assault. Artillery fire forced the defenders from the ramparts, allowing the Crusaders to storm the walls with ladders and slaughter most of the pagans. Theodoric also captured Romage on the other bank of the Memel. The Skalovians retaliated by sacking Labia near Königsberg. Conrad von Theurberg escalated the conflict by sending a large raid against Skalovia. Nicholas von Giroschin documented the Crusaders as killing and capturing numerous pagans. When the Skalovian warriors went in pursuit of the captured pagans, Conrad shattered the would-be rescuers in an ambush which killed the pagan leader, Steingeli. Most Sclovian nobles quickly surrendered to the knights in the battle's aftermath. The Teutonic Knights planned to advance against Samogitia after conquering Sclovia, but the outbreak of a new rebellion engineered by Skalmantas of the Sudovians delayed the campaign. In 1276–77 the Sudovians and Lithuanians raided Kulm-Erland and burned settlements near the castles of Redin, Marienwerder, Zantir, and Christberg. Theodoric of Samland was able to convince the Sambians not to rebel, and the Natangians and Warmians followed suit. Conrad von Theurberg the Elder led 1,500 men into Kimena in summer 1277, and crushed a Sudovian army of 3,000 near the Winds Forest. Many Pogisanians fled to the Lithuanians and were resettled at Gardinas, while the ones who remained in Prussia were resettled by the Crusaders, probably near Marienburg, Malbork. This new brick castle, built to replace Zantir, guarded against further rebellions with Elbing and Christberg. The Central Prussian tribes surrendered to the Crusaders by 1277. The Crusaders and Sudovians engaged in guerrilla warfare, which the Sudovians were particularly adept at. However, they lacked the sheer numbers to deal with their German, Polish, and Volhynian adversaries, and the Sudovian nobility began gradually surrendering one by one. Marshal Conrad von Theurberg the Younger raided Pokema, capturing large amounts of cattle, horses, and prisoners. They then successfully ambushed the 3,000 strong force of pursuing Sudovians, losing only 6 Christians in the process. In 1280 the Sudovians and Lithuanian invaded Samland, but the alerted order had fortified their castles and deprived the raiders of provisions. While the pagans were in Samland, Comte Ulrich Bayer of Tapia led a devastating counter-raid into Sudovia. The Polish prince Leszek the Black achieved 2 significant victories over the pagans, securing the Polish border, and Skalmantas fled Sudovia to Lithuania. In summer 1283, Conrad von Theurberg the Younger was named provincial master of Prussia and led a large army into Sudovia, finding little resistance. The knight Ludwig von Liebenzell, who had once been a captive of the Sudovians, negotiated the surrender of 1,600 Sudovians and their leader Kadingard, who were subsequently resettled in Samland. Most of the remaining Sudovians were redistributed to Pogisania and Samland. Skalmantas was pardoned and allowed to settle at Balga. Sudovia was left unpopulated, becoming a border wilderness that protected Prussia, Masovia, and Volhynia from the Lithuanians. The Prussians rebelled in short-lived uprisings in 1286 and 1295, but the Crusaders firmly controlled the Prussian tribes by the end of the 13th century. The Prussian populace retained many of their traditions and way of life, especially after the Treaty of Christberg protected the rights of converts. The Prussian uprisings led to the Crusaders only applying these rights to the most powerful converts, however, and the pace of conversion slowed. After the Prussians were militarily defeated in the second half of the 13th century, they were gradually subjected to Christianization and cultural assimilation during the following centuries as part of the monastic state of the Teutonic Knights. With the fall of Acre and Outremer and the securing of Prussia, the order then turned its focus against Christian Pomerelia, which separated Prussia from Imperial Pomerania, and against pagan Lithuania.